Okay, so a long time ago, I wrote this. I got a little notebook and I wrote on it the most difficult chapters of our lives. And I compiled some pieces of work, some written by me and some not, some written by friends of mine. And, occasionally there's a story I just found and it wanted to be read. But this first chapter was written by me, I would say maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago. Chapter 1. This crazy bitch. There was a time when chaos ensued, and it didn't care what the weather was like. A state of misery was found in the aftermath of drug addiction and sleepless nights. Methamphetamine helped to get the job done, but over time, there was a price to pay. These words are born of an addict's diary and her madman. They love each other, and neither of them is happy with the life they have found in addiction to speed. The addiction controls them to a certain extent, and they never blame it for anything. It could never be the drug's fault. The drug is responsible for getting beyond barriers, past the sticking point, beyond the smoking joint, to the gist of what matters. The truth is shattered by facts they ignore, and what they reveal in their spare time is little more than scribble on a page that is waiting to be read. I'm not so sure I'm ready to read these rambling phrases that are paid for with the sweat and tears. But I was there when they said I do. I was the one who married these two, and by the power invested in me, I pronounced them man and wife. At that point, I was deputized for the day, and on that day in which the marriage was to take place, a terrible storm had arrived, and the skies were very dark, and a strong wind blew sheets of rain. I sat in my office and watched the trees bending in the gust across the field on the Redmond Trail. There's a knock at the door, and I say, "Come in." The door opens, and standing there looking at me is Leavenworth. He was having second thoughts. "I don't think I'm getting married today," he said. "Why not?" I replied. "I don't know if I trust this crazy bitch. She might just try to stab me in my sleep." "I thought you loved her, Levin." "I do, but that doesn't mean she's not crazy." "I don't know what the hell to do. I think I might be losing my mind, John. I've known that for a long time now. I suspected it when you married Wendy Watts and she was already married." "That didn't count, John. I only married her so I can get out of Sahara and come back to Stambu." "I did love her, though." "I love them all, John. I can't fucking help myself. I get one and then I absolutely need someone else. I need a wife and an old lady and a girlfriend. Don't you think that's a little bit too much for one man to put himself through? What about the girls? What about Mary Jane? Doesn't she deserve all of you? All of your love and devotion? You will only devastate her just like all the girls. And you can't help yourself. It's who you are. We've known each other for too long now, and I'm well aware of your tendencies. I should have told you no when you asked me to perform this marriage ceremony for you. But I'm not like that. I love a challenge. I like to see what I can do, not worry about what I can't do." And Levin stood there listening to me. He knew that I was striking a chord, and that resonated with his deepest concerns. He wanted nothing more than a reputation that would paint a picture of a man who could have it all, smart enough to find his way through a lab full of chemicals and sly enough to alter his identity to meet the needs of a convict on the run from a haunting past that wouldn't just forget all of what he'd put it through. "I'm going home," he said. "I'm going out to the shop and tell everyone it's over. I can't do it. I mean, just look at this weather. I can't get married in a storm. The only thing missing is the thunder." And just then, there was a flash of light, and moments later, the thunder began to echo from the sky. Maybe it was an omen, a boding sign of things to come. I didn't know what to say. I had my own issues gnawing at me. Leavenworth was just one of them. And I'd never met his Mary Jane, his newest claim to fame. She was more than his burning flame. She was his everything. Levin went outside and I followed him into the driving rain. He walked up to the car window where Mary Jane sat in the passenger seat and he said, "It's just too nasty out to get married today. I'm putting the hot dogs away and bringing all the beer and food home. I'm over it." It was the first time I'd ever seen Mary Jane. I didn't know much about this girl. Levin had only recently met her at the low-income housing complex a few months ago. He knew it was love. It always is. And he couldn't deny what his loins were saying to him. So he put on his charm to disarm this fair maiden and woo her into a respectable state of mutual admiration for one another. The whole thing sort of took me by surprise. I'd known Levin for 20 years. He was many things in this life. He was a rougher for a little while. Then he was a butcher. He was a con and a felon and an inmate for many years. He was always better in jail than a free man. He stood 5'7" tall, and that may be stretching it. His hair was dirty blonde, and his scalp was always sore and at times raw from his condition. It would clear up when he shaved his head, and his skin was no longer as miserable as it had been hiding under his baseball cap. He smoked cigarettes and rode mopeds and scooters when he could afford them. His latest rig was a U-Haul, the very same U-Haul that he got busted in less than a year ago, with his loaded .44 Magnum and about a pound of crank. It's a very long story. It takes almost 60 years to get to that point in his tale. Levin no longer had teeth like when I first met him, and those teeth were hard to look at. Rotten. So much of his life was spent searching for ways to satisfy his desires. It consumed him constantly. Even his alias was an attempt to meet that end, and for so many months he was Jiffy Harbin from Sahara. But I didn't want to know what Jiffy wasn't telling me. I just wanted to get my jobs done. It didn't matter if Jiffy was a criminal, as long as he wasn't a criminal anymore. He wanted to be a good boy. He just didn't know how. After 10 years of running a drywall business, I got used to convicts looking for a place to work. The walls didn't care if the employee was on dope, and even the customers were somewhat numb to the idea that construction workers like to get their party on. That buzz is what made their world go round. Some of them claimed to be recreational drug addicts, and for the most part, they seemed normal. It was when they weren't high that it began to affect their performance. But it was very hard for me to know when they were loaded. There was a fine line that we all walked to know this world. It wasn't easy. Everyone had a different struggle to contend with, and that only added to the drama of everyday life. Alcohol was normal, and a few beers was very ordinary. It was numbing, and with the buzz, there was this feeling of contentment. I would reach for it, and with each ice-cold beverage, wash the worries of my world right down my throat. And when everything was just right, I was polluted, drunk. But I wasn't done yet. There was still beer to drink, and I gazed off at the tree line of the Redmond Trail and watched the moon rise over the Lord Zealous while listening to the oceanic waves crashing into the shores of Stambu and crack a fresh one and put it to my lips.